Principal Officer William Hogarth stands accused in Fulchester Crown Court of wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm one of the prisoners in his charge. At yesterday's hearing, the injured man, Mick Johnson, told the court he'd been sneaking drugs in one of the prison's toilets when Hogarth caught and assaulted him. The next witness, Principal Officer Carrington, confirmed that after being called to the scene by one of the other prisoners, Victor Sneed, he had found the accused alone with the unconscious Johnson. Sneed, currently in the witness box, claims to have seen the actual assault. Defence counsel Mr. Golding is cross-examining.
And you've been studying accountancy?
Evenings, like. Of course, what with the spraying all day and the conditions in Fulchester, you've got to be a raving genius to get on and improve your mind with that lot.
The conditions?
Well, overcrowding is free, sometimes 4 to a cell. No privacy, no staff to run proper classes. I mean, typical, isn't it? Give you all this crap about rehabilitation, but when it comes down to it, sorry, mate, no can do.
Frustrating.
You're right, you're absolutely right.
And I believe you've also achieved a higher status among the other prisoners, have you not?
How's that?
Or isn't it true they tend to come and consult you about their appeals against sentence, for instance? Aren't you somewhat of a cell-block lawyer?
Well, only with what I've picked up over the years, mind.
Yes, and presumably this status was also behind your militancy during the riots.
How's that?
In 1972, the
yeah, the protests.
You were you not, one of the principal organisers?
Well, see, that was a matter of basic human dignity. The rotten grub, the slopping out, the banging up, the strips, letter censoring. Do you know in Fulchester, we get half hour a month visiting? Half hour a month. Don't matter what the Home Office says about 1 hour minimum.
I see. And is it not a fact that your actions over these protests, as you call them, isn't it true that these brought you into sharp conflict with Principal Officer Hogarth?
Well, not with him particularly, more his sort. Well, yeah, bound to, wasn't it? I mean, his type belongs to the old bread and water, no talking days, eh? He'd have us all back sewing mailbags if he had his way. Inmates is scum to him.
Scum?
Yeah. Animals. Fitted for no more rights than an herd of cattle.
Yes, and prisoners' rights, as we've heard, are a speciality of yours.
Well, why not?
Oh, indeed. But then rights and privileges are also something that can be abused, aren't they?
What?
Weren't you abusing the home visiting privilege when you were caught with that package of cannabis resin late last summer? And was it Mr. Hogarth who caught you with that cannabis?
Well, for a start, it wasn't even my grass. He planted it on me.
Loss of 18 months remission. Moved from among the relatively trusted prisoners into Category B cell block.
Yeah, that's right.
Tougher in there, isn't it? Up to 15 hours a day locked in your cells, longer at weekends, far less recreational facilities, limited television. No wonder you dislike Mr. Hogarth. He caught you out, didn't he? Caught you abusing your precious privileges.
So I paid for that, didn't I? Or am I on trial again?
Well, let's be fair. Let's remember that you are also a man anxious to improve himself, the studier, the cell-block lawyer, the man of influence, respected by his fellows. Aren't you, in fact, what is known as a baron?
That I wouldn't know.
Oh, come now, surely. If prisoners want something, some speed pills, a joint, some stir-brewed hooch, isn't it to you that they come?
There you are. Just who's on trial here, me lord?
Just answer the question, Sneed, yes or no.
No.
Sneed, would it be fair to describe you as a man of initiative, an opportunist?
Well, of course, you've got to preserve your identity, your individuality. They're very hot on all that. All them social workers are.
Particularly with regard to a man's rehabilitation?
Well, why not?
Yes. And one thing does puzzle me, though, how you come to be doing a 5-year stretch for what my colleague, I think, described as the non-antisocial crime of fraud. 5 years seems a very heavy sentence.
Well, pro, ain't I?
A professional. Oh, you mean you're a recidivist, consistently in and out of prison?
Well...
Yes, how many times have you, in fact, been sentenced?
10, sir.
10 prison sentences in what, 20 years? This revered goal of rehabilitation isn't quite your thing, is it, Sneed?
Look, mister, the first porridge I ever done, I was lucky to get out alive, I was. Lucky to get out alive, let alone reformed.
And is that the kind of porridge you get in Fulchester?
Well, Mr. Price, the governor. He's trying all right, but what chance does he stand with hard case crews like him about, eh?
Ah, yes, and also while he's got the cells full of a lot of old lag recidivists like you, eh? Men who simply abuse the privileges he offers them.
Well, for a start, Hogarth wouldn't offer rope to a drowning man. I'd like to see you try and do in time. See how you come out of it. Start a new life.
Need. Just answer the question.
Yes, my lord. Sorry, Mr. Golding, sir. No offence. It's just that it's easy for you to make us look like dirt.
Surely, Sneed, the point is that as long as there are old lags in prison like you, there will have to be tough, discipline-conscious prison officers like Mr. Hogarth to keep you in order.
If you say so, sir.
Oh, but I do. You see, I'm suggesting that men like you welcome the prison reforms. Welcome them because they can mean a slackening of discipline, an opportunity of enhancing your little empires. And you particularly dislike the tough, hard-working staff like Mr. Hogarth because they know the tricks that you are up to. They have to be fought, don't they, Sneed? Fought and, if possible, discredited, if not destroyed. Well?
Look, sir, you don't fight the screws, not in stir. Not if you know what's good for you. Anyway, can you imagine Mick Johnson picking a fight with Hogarth?
And I'm sure you, of all people, would know that, since you yourself have been involved in several prior investigations into assaults on prisoners.
Cleared, weren't I?
Weren't two of them involving assaults on Johnson?
My lord, I must protest most vigorously. The witness was, as he has said, cleared of those assaults.
Is that true, Sneed?
As I'll stand here, my lord.
Then that is not a legitimate question, Mr. Golding, is it? It has no bearing if Sneed was cleared of the charges.
Very well, my lord. Nevertheless, Mr. Sneed, I suggest that until you were removed into Category B cell block, Johnson was your fag.
You what?
Your fag, your servant.
No, sir.
And as such, he knew of your illicit brewing activities in one of the prison's greenhouses, and he anonymously tipped off the authorities.
I don't know what you're on about.
Because of this, you owed the little man a beating.
But Mick Johnson had nothing to do with that. Or if he did, it's the first I've heard of it.
You cornered him in the workshop washroom. You told him he was for it, but that you go easy on him if he promised to name Officer Hogarth as his assailant.
Look, you said yourself it was an anonymous tip-off.
You deliberately sought to frame this man, to frame him out of vengeance.
But, no, I mean, what do I say?
Yes or no will suffice, Sneed.
Well, of course it's no. I still don't know what he's bothering about.
Well, we shall see. No more questions, my lord. Thank you.
Mr. Lotterby, you wish to re-examine?
No, my lord.
Very well, officer. Return him to the holding cell, please.
That concludes the case for the prosecution, my lord.
Thank you. Very well, Mr. Golding.
My lord, the first offence witness is the accused Principal Officer William Hogarth. Would you be so kind as to step into the box, please? During your 25 years with the prison service, have you ever been convicted of any act of violence or disciplined for improper treatment of a prisoner?
Never, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hogarth. Would you show the witness the plan, please? Now, were you on duty in the prison engineering shop on the morning of November the 3rd, December the 3rd last?
I was, sir.
Yes. Would you please tell the court what happened there shortly before midday?
Yes, sir. Well, like Mr. Carrington said in evidence, there was this disturbance up at the welding end of the shop. After noting the situation, I stationed myself by the main entrance here.
And why there?
Well, in my experience, accidents of that nature often turn out to be something else.
Planned diversions, you mean?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I see there's an alarm bell by the main entrance here and also a clear view of the entire shop.
I see. And then?
I saw the prisoner Sneed outside the washrooms. He was hanging about. I was suspicious. I called out to him.
Excuse me, what were you suspicious about?
Sneed has a reputation as a drugs baron. I reckon he could have been waiting there for a drop. I told him to accompany me into the washroom. The moment I entered, I saw Johnson lying in the doorway of the furthest toilet.
Yes, thank you, Usher. Yes?
I made an error of procedure at that point, sir. I should have marched Sneed straight outside and called on Mr. Carrington's assistance.
But instead, you went to the aid of the injured man.
Oh, yes, I was surprised to see Johnson lying there on the floor. I went there and I tried to get him up. Well, next thing, Sneed's in there with Mr. Carrington. Of course, I could see Johnson was in a pretty bad way. And because of this, I expressed some anger at the prisoner, Sneed. both then and after I returned from telephoning for the medics. As I recall, I threatened the man with severe disciplinary action.
You had formed the opinion that he was guilty of this assault.
Oh, there was no shadow of doubt in my mind, sir, and nor is there now.
Yes, but you say that when you spoke to Sneed and asked him what he'd been up to, he answered you casually.
Yes.
Yes, and then accompanied you without resistance to the washroom.
Yes, sir.
Well, he had, by your account, just beaten up Johnson, and you two say he was quite composed.
Well, from his behaviour, sir, he must have been acting according to a preconceived plan.
A plan?
Yes, he wanted me to be caught with his victim so as he could implicate me with the attack.
And have you any idea why he should have wished to do this?
Yes, must have been out of vengeance. As you said earlier, I caught Sneed with that cannabis last year.
And that could have motivated him to try and frame.
Oh, yes, he's not the sort of person who could take a thing like that.
His pride, you mean?
His rating with the other prisoners, sir. He took a knocking getting caught with those drugs. If he can fix me, finish me with this trial, he is back on top. Cock of the roost.
I see. Now then, you've heard Johnson's evidence about finding this angel dust and flushing it down the lavatory. What have you to say to that?
Well, that's a lie, sir. As you said earlier, Johnson used to be Sneed's fag. Anything Sneed told him to say, he'd say it.
Even to the extent of falsely accusing you of assaulting him? Even that?
Certainly, sir. I mean, that is all part of the code in prison.
All part of the prisoner's code? Yes. Thank you, Mr. Hogarth.
Yes. So you'll agree that you are obsessed with fighting the drugs racket.
Hardly obsessed, sir.
Or let me rephrase, you have been deeply committed to stamping out drug abuses.
Yes.
Yes. Now, we heard that you've never been convicted for any sort of violence, but I'd like to refer you to a case in your army service in Hong Kong. You were court-martialed, were you not, for assaulting a soldier whom you suspected of passing drugs?
Yes,
My Lord, I must object. The witness was cleared of that charge and, as he has said, has no conviction.
Mr. Lotterby, that question is not legitimate, is it, any more than was Mr. Golding's question to Sneed not more than 10 minutes ago?
Very well, my lord. Nevertheless, Mr. Hogarth, this drug episode in the prison involved you in something of a vendetta with Sneed, did it not?
I suppose you could put it that way.
Hence Sneed's motive, you tell us, for framing you with the assault.
That's right.
Thank you. So why, in your statement to the detective investigating the case and later at the committal proceedings, why did you omit all reference to this? Perhaps you've forgotten what you said in your statement. I'll read it to you, shall I? I saw Sneed hanging around outside the washrooms. I called to him and then went in. I found Johnson unconscious on the floor, etc., etc. It was obvious to me that Sneed had committed the assault. End of story. None of these bizarre contrivances about being framed, about Sneed getting back at you in order to get back on top as cock of the roost. Well?
I wasn't called on to elaborate in the initial statement.
Elaborate, yes. Well, that's certainly what you're doing, isn't it? A most ingenious elaboration, contriving a motive for Sneed where before there was none. Let's examine the new version, shall we? Now, you say you made an error of procedure in going first to the injured man. But this story of yours about being framed, it simply doesn't add up, does it? You see, Sneed's whole plan would have depended upon you, a prison officer of 25 years' experience, making an error of procedure.
Well, he hadn't necessarily planned it like that.
Like what?
Well, he might have hoped I wouldn't see him.
We didn't see him do anything, did you? Now, Mr. Hogarth, I put it to you that this whole framing story of yours is a fabrication. A recent fabrication, one in which you've conveniently dreamed up since the committal proceedings.
Oh, no. And look, if you want a recent fabrication, what about Johnson's story about the drugs? He didn't mention them in his initial statement either, did he? No, he just said I caught him in there and beat him for no reason.
Is that perhaps why you too felt obliged to keep your initial statement to a bare, unadorned minimum?
Well, why, I suppose. Look, I didn't know he was going to start trotting out all these lies about finding drugs and flushing them down the pan.
So you hope that even now he'd be too frightened of the consequences to mention the drugs?
There were no drugs.
But you've just told us you suspected there were.
I was wrong.
How about the vendetta?
I didn't mention that in the initial statement because I could see it wouldn't help.
Wouldn't help?
Could maybe have seemed to show me up as, well, prejudiced against Sneed.
Oh, well, it does that. It certainly does that, Mr. Hogarth. Right, well, perhaps we should talk about the victim, Johnson. You don't like him much, do you?
I wouldn't say I dislike him. Pity him, maybe.
Oh, come, you heard Mr. Carrington's evidence. The 6 offenders are everyone's whipping boy.
Well, among the prisoners, I suppose. Even 1 or 2 of the staff.
Do you deny saying that Johnson should be in a nut house?
Certainly I said that. And the same applies to several of the other inmates.
Well, then.
It doesn't mean to say I pick on him. I mean, all right, so he wets his bed, has screaming nightmares, breaks things and so on. You don't pick on a man for that. Not when you know he can't help it. What he needs is treatment.
As opposed to punishment?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, I gather that's rather a recurring theme between you and your colleagues, is it not?
What is?
This issue of punishment versus treatment.
I was talking about Johnson.
Yes, and now I'm talking about the other prisoners. You see, one has this image of the old hard-line prison officer as a man of inflated power, a little Hitler lording it over the inmates.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have that idea. Look, we are doing a tough job with a lot of men who resent being inside. They resent the law. They resent authority in any form. No matter how you treat them, they'll always call you a Hitler.
Yes, well, I'm sure that's true. But isn't it also true that you are in conflict with the more progressive of your colleagues?
Some of the younger ones, yeah.
And basically, over the introduction of these reforms we heard Mr. Carrington discussing.
Yeah.
Now, have you not tended to resist reforms?
No, not resist. Look, Fulchester is an old county prison housing a mixed bag of criminals without the staff quota or other facilities for reform. Reforms just make for frustration.
Yes. Well, I put it to you, officer, that you have felt increasingly isolated and frustrated in your job, cheated of promotion. And it was in this mood that you came upon the prisoner Johnson, a man whom you always despised, came upon him in the very act of flushing drugs down the lavatory. And as you stood there watching the evidence wash away before your eyes, all the bitterness inside you erupted into violence. And whatever the reason, you seized that unfortunate little man, beat him about the body and flung him to the ground with such violence that you fractured his skull. And you did this knowing that it would be your word against his should there be any comeback. But unfortunately for you, there was a witness to this attack, and that witness had the presence of mind to call Principal Officer Carrington. Now that is the truth, is it not?
No, sir. Look, I have been a prison officer for 25 years, and it's a sacred rule that you never attack a prisoner.
25 years. Years of increasing isolation and frustration. No more questions, Malone.
Golding, do you wish to re-examine?
I do indeed, my lord. Mr. Hogarth, you've told us how and why the prisoner Sneed intended to frame you with this assault.
Yes.
Yes, and now the prosecution is suggesting that this is a recent fabrication which you have dreamed up since the committal proceeding. Now, is that true?
No, it's not, sir.
No. Now, we've heard what you said in your initial statement, perhaps understandably a rather scant description of the events, but did you at that time mention to anyone, a colleague perhaps, that you knew Sneed was trying to frame you?
Well...
Anyone at all?
As a matter of fact, there was one person, yes.
Yes, who was it?
My wife, sir.
Oh, I see. My lord, I shall, of course, take steps to call Mrs. Hogarth to confirm this, but does your lordship have any more questions?
No, thank you. Mr. Hogarth, you may return to the dock. Thank you.
My lord.
And until Mrs. Hogarth's presence can be secured, I would like to call Mr. Price, the prison governor, as a character.
Harold John Price, please. Come this way, please.
What is your religion?
Roman Catholic.
Take the Bible in your right hand and read aloud the words on this card.
I swear by Almighty God.
Hello? Could I speak to Mrs. Betty Hogarth, please?
And the accused's record of service?
Beyond reproach. He is a discipline officer, and as such involved with perhaps the least rewarding aspect of prison work.
Excuse me, but why is that?
Pardon? Ah, yes. Well, the discipline officers tend to bear the brunt of the inmates' grievances, their resentments, their gestures of individuality. Hence, the DOs are often the least popular.
And the slower in achieving promotion?
Not necessarily. The opportunities are the same for all.
Well, you see, Governor, we've heard it suggested that Mr. Hogarth has been cheated of promotion.
Not cheated, surely.
Well, still, a principal officer at 47.
This could be simply a reflection of his difficulty at passing exams. The amount of overtime he does, I suppose, is not all that surprising.
Then he is keen on his work.
He's never objected to the workload, but then he's not the type to voice grievances.
Yes, not a union man.
On the contrary.
And despite his slow promotion, his record of service, you say, is beyond reproach.
Yes.
Yes, you see, because it has been also suggested that he is at odds with the prison's administration.
Well, if so, this could be over the issue of discipline.
Yes?
We're tending to lay less emphasis on obedience nowadays, trying to improve the social climate in prison. Could be he finds this disturbing.
Particularly since firm discipline is consistent with the best traditions of the prison service?
I suppose so.
Yes. A code of tradition to which Mr. Hogarth is rigidly loyal, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I would. Unreservedly.
Unreservedly, yes. And implicit in that code is also the rule that an officer shall never strike a prisoner.
Other than in self-defense, yes.
Yes. Thank you, Governor.
Mr. Price, would you describe the accused as an ideal prison officer?
Perhaps not ideal.
No, he's the old hardline disciplinarian, isn't he?
Now, look.
He's the type who tends to jeopardize rehabilitation prospects by alienating inmates and staff.
Look. So he's not perfect. But it'll still need a very long time and far bigger cash allocations from the Home Office before we can dispense with his type.
Oh, surely if you're aiming at reforms...
Aiming, yes, but far from achieving, and until we are... Well, take this drugs nonsense. The whole climate in prison lends itself to drug abuses. But for the vigilance of certain discipline officers, like Bill Hogarth, things could get wildly out of hand.
Governor, can you confirm that there was a rash of violence last autumn in the Category B cell block?
Yes.
Yes. Were you not forced to make it the subject of an inquiry?
Yes, I was.
Did the inquiry find anything to implicate the accused in any way?
No.
Didn't it find that the pattern of disorder coincided precisely with Officer Hogarth's duty shift?
That could hardly be said to implicate him.
Nevertheless, wasn't he moved off that shift? Moved on to day duty in the prison workshops?
The entire shift was moved to other work, all 8 officers.
But including the accused?
Yes.
One of the more senior and presumably more responsible officers present?
Yes.
The case of the Queen against Hogarth will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court.